Inside Nvidia's flagship AI rack, the GB200 NVL72, there are 5,184 copper cables. Stretched end to end, that's more than 2 miles of copper, wound through a single refrigerator-sized box, just to let 72 chips talk to each other. Every one of those cables needs a connector. And almost all of them run through one American company you've probably never thought about. Here's the counterintuitive part: while everyone fights over who makes the AI chip, a quieter business is collecting a tax on every connection between them, and it just grew its AI revenue 124% in a single year. This is the connector industry. Let's get into it. Start with the idea that makes this whole episode, because once you see it you'll never unsee it. A chip is useless on its own. To build an AI supercomputer you have to connect thousands of them, chip to chip, board to board, rack to rack, and every one of those links is a physical connector and a cable. Here's the multiplier. An AI server uses an estimated 5 to 8 times more connectors than a traditional server, and each one is worth 3 to 5 times more, because it has to carry data at staggering speeds without errors. So as the world spends $300 billion building AI data centers, a hidden slice of every dollar flows not to the chip, but to the unglamorous hardware that wires it all together. That's the interconnect tax. Now meet the company collecting that tax, Amphenol, ticker APH. In 2025 it did $23.1 billion in revenue, up 52% in a single year, which for a 100-year-old industrial company is almost unheard of. The engine is its IT datacom segment, now about 41% of the business, where AI-driven revenue grew 124% year-over-year. Its market value has swelled to roughly $157 billion. And here's the kicker: Amphenol's high-speed connector, called Paladin HD, running at 224 gigabit per channel, is sole-sourced for the spine of Nvidia's flagship rack. Sole-sourced. That means when Nvidia ships that system, Amphenol is the only company supplying that critical part. There is no plan B. Here's a detail that surprises people: inside that AI rack, Nvidia chose copper, not fiber optics. Why? Because over the short distances inside a single rack, under 3 meters, copper is cheaper and burns far less power. By one industry estimate, wiring a cabinet in copper costs around $220,000 versus well over $1 million for optics, while saving roughly 20 kilowatts of power per rack, power you'd rather spend on the GPUs. Optics only win once you go rack to rack or across the data center. So the interconnect war splits into two fronts. Inside the rack, copper cables and connectors dominate. That's Amphenol's stronghold. Between racks and across the building, light takes over, and that's where a completely different American champion steps in. The same AI build-out feeds both. Copper for the short hops, glass for the long ones. And critically, every new generation of chip needs more of both, faster. Every dollar of AI compute now drags an estimated 18 cents of optical interconnect spend behind it, double the level of just a few years ago. This is a content story, not just a volume story. Let's put the field on the board. On the connector side, Amphenol, the dominant pure play and the copper spine sole source. TE Connectivity, the close number 2, whose AI revenue just tripled past $900 million. On the optical side, Corning, the glass giant riding the fiber half of the same war. Then the supporting names: Belden in industrial cabling, BELFB in rack power. And the honest counterweight, Sensata, Method, and Littelfuse, whose auto and industrial connector businesses are actually shrinking, a reminder this isn't all AI. If you've followed this run, homebuilders, insurance, distributors, trucking, and now the wiring of artificial intelligence, subscribe and stick around. Same depth, every industry. Now let's break down the winners. What makes Amphenol special isn't just AI, it's a relentless acquisition machine layered on top. Amphenol grows by buying smaller connector and component makers and bolting them on, decade after decade, dozens of deals. The latest is the boldest. In January 2026 it closed the purchase of CommScope's connectivity and cable solutions business for $10.5 billion, its largest deal ever, deepening its reach into the fiber and copper wiring that links data centers. That came on top of 2 smaller CommScope units bought the year before, the outdoor wireless networks business for around $2.1 billion, and the Andrew Mobile Networks unit for around $2 billion, a mobile infrastructure deal, distinct from the $10.5 billion data center connectivity deal. The pattern is consistent: use the cash flow from the core business to buy the next one, integrate it, and compound. It's the same playbook that turned a sleepy connector maker into a $157 billion giant. The close number 2 is TE Connectivity. $17.3 billion in revenue, growing 9% overall, with a market value around $60 billion, but the AI story inside it is exploding. Its artificial intelligence revenue more than tripled in a year, blowing past $900 million, and its industrial segment jumped 38% to $2.2 billion. In its most recent quarter, revenue rose 22% to $4.7 billion and TE booked a record $5.1 billion in new orders running ahead of sales, a signal that the AI demand isn't slowing. Where Amphenol is the aggressive acquirer, TE is the broad, diversified incumbent, huge in automotive, industrial, and now data centers. For an investor, it's the slightly more balanced way to own the connector theme, less explosive than Amphenol on AI, but anchored by a massive base business across the entire economy. Now the other front of the war, Corning, the company that's been making glass for 170 years. Its optical communications business did $6.3 billion in 2025, up 35%, and the enterprise piece, the data center fiber feeding AI, surged 61%. The proof point is the contract. Meta signed a deal worth $6 billion through 2030 to buy Corning's optical fiber and cable, and Corning has hinted at 2 more hyperscaler deals of similar size. Think about what that means. The cloud giants are now signing multi-year, multi-billion-dollar supply agreements just for the glass that connects their AI clusters. Copper wins inside the rack, Corning's fiber wins everywhere the signal has to travel farther. Same build-out, 2 different winners. There's a fast-growing middle ground worth knowing about, because it's where the next fight is. At medium distances, a few meters, too far for plain copper but not worth full optics, a new product is taking over, the active electrical cable, which uses a small chip to boost the copper signal. It's cheaper and lower power than optics over those lengths. 2 US-listed names lead here, Astera Labs and Credo. They're not connector companies in the classic sense, they make the signal conditioning chips that go into these cables. I flag them because the copper versus optics boundary is exactly where the technology, and the profits, will shift over the next few years. Watch that boundary move, and you'll see which suppliers are gaining and which are getting squeezed. Now the part the AI hype machine skips. The connector industry is not all data centers, most of it, historically, is cars and factories. And that base is soft. Sensata, a major sensor and connector supplier, saw revenue fall 6% on weak automotive demand. Method posted a 6% decline and a net loss. Littelfuse took a $300 million write-down and swung to a loss. In other words, strip out the AI data center boom and a big chunk of this industry is in a cyclical downturn tied to autos and industrial production. That matters for 2 reasons. First, it tells you the AI winners, Amphenol, TE, Corning, are genuinely riding something special, not a rising tide. And second, it's the risk. If AI capex ever cools, these companies fall back onto a base that's currently shrinking. Let's be honest about what could go wrong. First, valuation, Amphenol trades around 45 times earnings. That prices in years of flawless AI growth, and any hyperscaler capex slowdown would hit that 124% datacom number hard. Second, substitution risk, Amphenol's crown jewel is its sole-sourced copper spine, but if optics get cheaper and lower power faster than expected, that copper advantage compresses. Third, concentration, a huge share of the growth depends on a handful of customers, Nvidia and the cloud giants, all spending in the same cycle. Fourth, the soft base, autos and industrial are weak, so these stocks have less cushion if AI stumbles. The debate isn't whether the interconnect tax is real. It clearly is. It's whether the market has already priced in every dollar of it. Where does this go over the next 1 to 2 years? Base case, hyperscaler capex stays elevated, over $300 billion a year, and each new chip generation, from the GB200 to its successors, demands more connectors and more fiber at higher speeds. That keeps the content per server rising even if unit growth slows. Probable, not guaranteed. 3 things to track. 1. Amphenol's IT datacom growth rate each quarter. As long as it stays well above the rest of the business, the AI tax is compounding. 2. The copper versus optics mix at the next chip launch. watch whether Nvidia sticks with copper inside the rack or shifts toward optics, which reshuffles the winners. 3. The auto and industrial base. A recovery there adds a second engine. Continued weakness leaves these names fully dependent on AI, catalysts up, rising data rates, new hyperscaler fiber deals. Catalysts down, an AI capex pause, or faster optical substitution. Upstream sit the chipmakers, downstream sits every data center on Earth. The story of AI is told through chips. But a chip that can't talk to the chip next to it is just an expensive paperweight. The connectors and cables that wire them together are a hidden tax on the entire build-out, and a small group of American companies collects it on every link. Amphenol owns the copper inside the rack. Corning owns the glass between them. The question for the next 2 years is simple: as the machines get bigger and faster, does that tax keep compounding, or has the market already counted it? I'm Big Z, follow me, see you in the next deep dive.